All righty. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our Town Hall series for the City of Manassas and their upcoming elections. My name is Ross Snare, and I'm the Senior Director of Operations and Government Affairs here with the Prince William Chamber of Commerce. So excited to have everybody here today. As you know, we have an election coming up, and in normal times pre-COVID, we would have had this kind of event in person with everybody, and it's a good way to meet and greet with the candidates. What we decided to do this year is move it all virtual. So instead, we had the Democratic candidate for mayor, the Republican candidate for mayor, and we have invited to a series and speaking at their own individual times. We also extended an invitation to the Democratic candidates as well for this same kind of event. Unfortunately, they have not scheduled one yet. Still potentially could, but we'll keep you all posted. But just wanted to let everybody know we did offer it out to everybody. With that, we're going to get started, and I'm going to have each of the candidates talk, give us their elevator pitch for a little bit, and then we'll go into some series of questions. And at the end, what we're going to do is, if you could please, if you have questions for them, please put it into the chat box, and we will read the questions for the candidates out loud. Again, we are recording this event, and it'll be posted to our Facebook page later today for the community to see. So without further ado, I would like to have Ian Lovejoy give us his 5-minute pitch, or his elevator pitch to why he should be on City Council.
I don't dare me to talk for 5 full minutes here, because I could probably find a way to do it, much to everyone's panic. My name is Ian Lovejoy. Well, first of all, thank you to the Chamber, thank you, Ross, and for everybody who has helped coordinate today's events. We really appreciate it. Anything that we can do to communicate with the public and let them know that, while of course everyone knows there's an election going on, there's an important election happening here at the local level. So thank you for helping us be able to communicate with folks and get that information out. So that's very important. My name is Ian Lovejoy. It's been an honor to serve on the Manassas City Council for 2 terms. So that's a little over 8 years. In that time, it's been just an incredible honor to be able to work with certainly not only residents who live in the city, but our local businesses. To have worked with the Chamber over the years as well has been a great opportunity. I'm excited. I'm excited to serve the community. I've always been excited, and I'm excited to continue to serve. Obviously, there are some dark elements happening in the world right now, particularly when it comes to the pandemic and the economy, and there's a lot of uncertainty about how that's going to impact our businesses for the long term. But I'm looking at it bullishly. I'm looking at it optimistically. Being on the trenches with our local businesses, working with them on ways to mitigate the impacts of COVID and adapting has really shown me that there's an incredible entrepreneurial spirit that's taking place in the city of Manassas. And, you know, it doesn't matter what you throw at us. It doesn't matter what you throw at our community. We are rallying, and we are rising to this challenge. And so I would look forward to the next 4 years to continue to help with the bouncing back from the pandemic. I think that we haven't quite hit all the negative parts yet. I think that there's going to be continued pressures on our local economy and local businesses, and I'm eager to be here to help for the next 4 years to support them and our community.
Thank you, Ian. Harry? And you're muted. Harry, you're muted. Again, don't you love Zoom?
Okay, I'm Harry Clark. I'm a candidate for a seat on the Manassas City Council. I've been in the city for about 30 years. It'll be actually 30 years in December. I'm chairman of the Planning Commission, and I'm a member of the Regional Airport Commission, and I'm chairman of the Board of Equalization. So I know how the city works, and I've been involved in city governance, city administration since about 2002, when I joined the Parks and Recreation Committee. After that, I was appointed to the Planning Commission in 2008 and became chairman in 2011. I was also appointed at that time to the Airport Commission. And I'm still a member of the Airport Commission. I'm a U.S. Army veteran, as is my wife. My wife is a retired military police officer. I'm a retired military intelligence officer. So our kids couldn't get away with anything growing up, and they admit that. I'm all about supporting small and locally owned businesses in Manassas and getting them to work a little bit more closely and effectively with the school system to give our students jobs, internships, mentorships, and apprenticeships. I talked to Dr. Newman, and he said that a lot of businesses know that there's a program to get vocational technical students placed in businesses for training, but a lot of the businesses don't know how to access that, don't know how to do that very well. And I'm hoping to act as a mentor to them and a clearinghouse for them and assistance to them in getting our students to work with the business community. So I'm hoping everybody, I have everybody's vote and support for my candidacy.
Thank you, Harry. Lynn?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming today. And thanks, Russ and the Prince William County Chamber for having us. I would just like to introduce myself. I was born and raised in Manassas, but I did not live here my entire life. I moved overseas with my husband, who served in the military as well, lived in a couple of other states, which I think gives me a great purview and a global lens on things. I do remember Manassas being a little bit boring when I was younger, so I'm happy that it's a lot better and a lot more happening place in downtown Old Town. The reason I decided to run for city council is because I felt like the council members weren't listening to the residents, and I take that very seriously. My daughter is a school teacher at Osborne High School. We're very proud of her. She's also a graduate of Osborne City High School. And once we started getting more involved with the city, I'm on the Parks and Rec Committee. I'm also the chair of Keep Manassas Beautiful Advisory Committee. I also took the 2018 Leadership Academy through Manassas City to learn better how the city works, participating in mock budgets and the like. So I feel like I'm well prepared to take this seat and see how I can provide a different lens. One where maybe if processes and procedures are broken, we can fix them and address them for the overall benefit of everyone. I can't imagine how the city council members feel, who I know are our friends and neighbors, and they are there to do a good job. And I don't believe for a minute that any of them go to work every day expecting to disappoint us. But at the same time, maybe we haven't taken the steps necessary to make the changes needed to make processes more proactive and community engagement. And so that's really what I want to do. And I also want to make sure that our school board and our city council works better together for the benefit of our students. I think that's really important. I've also talked to Dr. Newman about that. And imagine if you only met once a year to talk about money and you never met any other time of the year. Those relationships are never going to grow. So we definitely need to do some work there. And I think I'm the person to do that. So I hope that I can earn your vote, and I hope that these are things that are meaningful to you. And I look forward to the conversation today.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lynn. We'll go into the first question. So obviously we're the Prince William Chamber of Commerce, so we care about business and economic development. So the first question will be for Harry. How do you plan on working with the business community if you're elected to city council? And that question will go to Lynn and then Ian as well.
This time I'll unmute myself. Well, first of all, I hope to act as a clearinghouse and be very transparent with the business community. I'm planning to institute regular monthly Facebook Live events as a city council member, and to have in-person events once the pandemic is abated. Secondly, I'm looking to get on the appointments committee and ensure that business-friendly and business knowledgeable people are appointed to the various boards and commissions that we have in the city. We've got 28 boards and commissions in the city. Many of them deal directly with the business community. So I want to make sure that business-friendly people and business knowledgeable people are on those boards and commissions. And finally, I do want to look at our tax burden. I know that we have the second highest tax rate now in the Commonwealth. I don't know why we should have that level of taxes. But really, the way I look at it, there are three pillars to that tax burden. Number one is the city manager's budget. I spent the last 19 years in business reviewing Army intelligence budgets and budget execution, so I know how to spot fat in the budget submissions. So I'm going to look at the city manager's budget and make sure that, especially in times of a pandemic and the hit on business that we've had from the pandemic, that we're not spending money on quote unquote nice to have things, that we're only doing things that we need to do to keep the city running and the city being a good place that it is. Second, we have to look at the assessments. I'm on the Board of Equalization, but I want to dig a little bit deeper into how the assessments of businesses are being made, whether or not they're too high, why they're at the level that they are, and get them under control. Thirdly, and that's the headline portion of this, is the tax rate. I know that the city manager came in with a tax rate of $1.44 per $100 of assessed value. And city council promptly talked about raising it, and did in fact raise it to $1.46. So I'm going to look at that tax rate. We've got to look at get a tax rate and an assessment rate that fully funds the city manager's budget, but just that doesn't try to create more than what we need.
Perfect. Thank you, Harry. Lynn?
Thank you, Harry. That was great. For me, I am a big proponent for small businesses. And when the COVID started, I reached out to the city council and created a business roundtable conversation straight away so that the businesses felt supported and that city council understood that they were going to need to lead during the crisis. And I felt the same way when it comes to the CT with the schools and maybe internship programs with the business community. I think that what I would like to do is create a sort of a steering committee inside the community that sort of helped us. I don't think we need to recreate the wheel here. Colleges do this all the time. It's just, how do we implement that program here in the city? And I know that the teachers and our superintendent are 100% behind this. So I'm all for making sure that the lines of communications are opened, and that, again, there's a process in place that people know how to follow and who to contact. And especially important for the students to know that there is a program like that out there for them, that they don't necessarily have to go to college. And I think that's something that we need to accept, that our diversity here has really impacted whether our students go to college or not. And having a vocational degree or a skill and trade oftentimes is really more important and more beneficial. So I think that our small business owners know that more than anybody. They are entrepreneurs and they are our leaders. And I look forward to working with them to further that in our city.
Thank you, Lynn. Ian?
First of all, great question. My first way to look at this is to continue what I've done for the past 8 years, which is to be ever present in our business community, to hear that feedback, to take that feedback honestly, and to be a voice for the business community on the city council. I'm honored to have been endorsed by the chamber in several of my last elections, and I think that speaks a lot for my involvement in our business community. And I think Manassas is interesting because of where we're located in Northern Virginia. We really have to have a two-pronged attack when we're looking at the business community. We absolutely have to support our small businesses. They are one of the largest drivers of our local economy. Just came out a report that $74.6 million is spent in the city by people who are traveling in this city as tourists, and that's being driven heavily by our small business community. So we have to be supporting everyone in the small business world because there's thousands of them. They're employing tons of people in the community. And we also have to recognize the city's place in Northern Virginia as we are a growing high-tech corridor. And what's fascinating about that is, as you see Micron expanding, Lockheed Martin, as you see Aurora Flight Sciences, these big name companies in the area that are good corporate stewards. They're bringing decent jobs. They're working with the community. A lot of that has happened without any real planning or organization. That was never necessarily our stated goal. So we've kind of lucked into having this center of gravity of businesses in the area that are expanding, that certainly fit that niche of high-tech job offerings, and there's a lot of growth in that sector. So we need to set ourselves up as the community that can support, that we have an educated community, that we have a connected community that can support those types of jobs as well as our small businesses. And so, I mean, we never want to forsake one in lieu of the other. We have to be able to have balanced policies where we are working with our small business community as well as our larger business community. I think that, you know, the strategy we've had over the years has been very successful, and it's one that I think we should continue, which is we aren't whale hunting, meaning we are not trying to land every year a multi-billion-dollar expansion or a multi-billion-dollar corporation moving into the city. Boutique shops. We prefer 10 or 15 people firms, government contractors moving into the city with 10 people, and then they add 5 more and 5 more and 5 more. It's much better to have a lot of moderate or small businesses in your arsenal than to just have a couple of large ones, because having that diversity in your you know, your business profile and your work profile in the city, it insulates you from when there are recessions or economic hiccups. So I think we need to continue that strategy. We need to be able to work with our large corporation partners. We have to be able to work with our mid-range partners, and we have to keep that focus on our small business partners here in the city. And I think the city does a pretty good job. If you know when a city has it kind of out of whack, when they're just focusing on big
to grow into small enterprises and increase employment here in the city of Manassas. We'll start with Lynn, then Ian, and then Harry.
That's a great question. I would have to say that I think an area where we can really help sole proprietors is making sure that any zoning restrictions they have are definitely considered as they're trying to grow. I think we should also consider helping them look for opportunities, which I know our economic development team already does. And I think that it comes down to just opening that line of communication between the city and the business owners. If you feel comfortable going to the city and your city contacts and telling them what your vision is, and working with Patrick Small, for instance, which I think he does a great job, by the way, I think that's going to facilitate that process a little bit easier than maybe being in another area where you have no contacts whatsoever. And I think that's one thing about a small town that is excellent for sole proprietors. Also, I think that we need to really maintain the tax rate and be mindful about that, because I think the taxes are where a lot of people struggle.
Ian.
Sorry. So I think that, you know, we have to speak to the past a little bit as we're looking towards the future. The city invested specifically into what we call Centrifuge. It's our small business incubator, and Centrifuge's purpose meets the goal that you just described perfectly. It is a place where people who are small proprietors, one woman or man bands, can make that choice to move out of their house or their basement or their home office and actually take up residence at a professional office setting in Old Town Manassas. So that is a concern. Like, how do you help individuals pull the trigger on that? And, you know, giving them a multi-$1,000 lease at a proper office building can be scary. And so the city worked with our business community and helped launch the Centrifuge, which again helps sort of mitigate those worries and gives you an to be able to get out of to expand outside of your, you know, your small business environment and grow. And also these individuals, they need coaching, they need mentorship. So that's also offered through Centrifuge, where people can go and learn how to make a budget for your company's expansion, where you can work with folks out of GMU and continue to, you know, get that information. You can work very closely. Our fantasy is people move out of their houses, they go to Centrifuge, and then they get, you know, when they grow and mature more, they get an office here in the building. You know, it's just like any marketing. You want to keep your pipeline full. So we want to be able to reach people in their homes. I think that we can do a better job of, every time somebody gets a business license in the city, we are made aware of it. A business license is a city of Manassas government document. So I think that we have a lot of people getting business licenses, and so we have a database of people who are trying to incorporate. And I think that we need to make sure that we're reaching out to them. Everyone who gets a business license in the city gets a welcome kit to the business community of Manassas. And that's something I would like to see, is focusing more on being proactive to those people who are just now starting up businesses in the city, and making sure that they know, if you're on the council, or if you kind of know about all of these resources, but newer businesses just don't. And so I would like to see us do a little better job of reaching into those fledgling businesses and communicating all these offerings to them, because I think it's a matter of we have the educational program, and we have resources, we have stuff businesses can use to really get off the ground, but do they know about it? And capturing them when they're first incorporating would be a way to do that. So thanks, Ross.
Thank you, Ian. Harry?
I'd echo what Ian just said. First of all, centrifuge is really the jewel in our crown of business development. I think it's one of the best things that we've come up with to support local businesses. Again, we need to take a careful look, or an organized look at the business licenses. When business licenses are issued, there needs to be an organized way for the business development office and the city council to reach out to the businesses and see that they have everything that they need. If they have any zoning concerns, any tax concerns, that we know about that, and then get them to see if when they're ready to come into centrifuge, and to take that next step to move forward from a sole proprietorship to a business with employees. And many of the sole proprietorships don't want to move out of their home. They're very happy if you've got a single architect, or a single CPA, or a single hairdresser that wants to do those things in their home. That's perfectly good too. They don't want to move and get any bigger. Then we need to support them as well. We need to give them whatever information they need, and to filling out city forms, to filling out they're helping them do their filling out their taxes and so forth. Just basically generally supporting the community, supporting the business community with assistance.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Harry. My next question is, how do you view the role of city council in creating a well-educated workforce, and the role of city council in economic development? We'll start with Ian, then go to Lynn, and then Harry again.
I'll answer the question in reverse. I'll start with the economic development question. The city's primary responsibility is to make sure that there is a competitive and clear playing field for all businesses, a place that businesses will find attractive and want to go, but that the city doesn't pick winners or losers, that we're not putting our thumbs on the scale to choose necessarily which types of businesses thrive or prosper and which ones don't. So we have an opportunity, the best type of economic development you can do is communicating what your community has, communicating what you have to offer. And in our circumstance, we have a lot to offer. We have a highly educated workforce, not only in Manassas, but in the region. We are, again, a burgeoning high-tech corridor, or frankly, an established high-tech corridor. So from an economic development standpoint, you want to be able to leverage those things. You also have to, just be mindful of what your city's needs. And, we have a lot of, there's a lot of chunks of land in the city where people reach out every year and want to put things or potentially develop things. And we're talking houses, we're talking, business development and strip malls and data centers. So there's always people reaching out trying to want to do things. And it's just having good stewardship over those finite resources. The city is 10 square miles. It's not getting any bigger. So every square inch we have to be very thoughtful and deliberate about how the city pursues its, policies of development there. And I will say that I think we do a pretty good job. 98% of ideas that get presented through staff and council get shot down. So we're being pretty discerning, I think, about how to use those finite resources of land and redevelopment opportunities in the city. So so again, to summarize, our role is just to have an effective, clear process, to be accessible, to make sure that paperwork is done smoothly and it's well communicated, and to be good stewards and good liaisons with the business community, but not to pick the winners and losers. And the city, a great question about education. The city council is in an interesting position, because the city council has responsibility over the broader concept of education in this community, not just the public schools. And I think that we sometimes forget that in these conversations, that obviously when you're talking about education in Manassas, you're going to spend 90% of your time talking about the public schools, because that's where the vast majority of all kids go. But that's a very specific conversation about public schools in Manassas. But in truth, the council existing as stewards of the entire community, we get to ask even bigger questions about education in general. And so we as a council need to not only be supportive of our public schools, but we have a lot of kids who are homeschooling. We have a lot of kids who are in private schools. Those parents are our constituents. Those kids are also under our charge. We want to make sure that those communities are working well, and can we help? How can we help all of those communities? But beyond K through 12, we have to make sure that there are other educational opportunities. Adults need education opportunities. Adults need to be able to retrain for jobs and positions. And we need to make sure we're working with our Northern Virginia Community College, we're working with GMU to make sure that no matter your age, if you need education and to retrain yourself, that you have access to that. So I'm glad that you phrased it as education and not just specifically one piece of the education puzzle, because our responsibility is much broader. And sort of to bring it all home and tie the two together, I think Micron represents a good example of how we wanted to make sure that the education piece as well as the economic development piece were married, because I want kids to graduate from Osborne and have job opportunities here, or go off to college and be able to come back here and work because there are good job opportunities. So when we were considering working with Micron and working on the expansion there and getting those jobs in, we wanted to make sure that students here had a fighting chance to get them. And that was baked into the whole plan. There's huge investments now into the Northern Virginia Community College, the Virginia Tech campus, go Hokies, up here in Northern Virginia. So kids could graduate from Osborne at 18, go out and get a certification and at a very low rate, and sometimes paid for by Micron, and then come back and get an $80,000 gig, $80,000 job at Micron and stay in the community. So it can't just be about bringing jobs in. You want to make sure your constituents have a reasonable pipeline to get those jobs. And I think that that's something that weighs heavily on us on all these economic development decisions.
Thank you, Ian. Lynn?
Hi, thanks. That was great, Ian. I mean, I echo all those things. I don't want to repeat exactly what he said, but I'll just chime in a little bit. I definitely think that the City Council has an obligation to be good stewards of our finite resources. As Ian mentioned, we are only 10 square miles, so making sure that the projects that we accept here is quite important. I think it's even more important to communicate that vision, even though it's ever changing, with the residents. And I think that's becoming more difficult with the lack of a newspaper and the reliance on social media, which is also changing. So I would say that for me, the economic development and the city regarding our responsibilities would sort of require us to have a more balanced, purposeful approach. And while I'm all for growth and expansion, I want to also make sure that we are taking into consideration sustainability. And when we talk about education, this is exactly the conversations my daughter and I had when she was going off to college. And we are so thrilled that she was able to go and get her master's and come back and teach at Osborne City High School. We're thrilled that she owns a house in Manassas City. We are concerned that she could be taxed out of that house. So I think when we're talking about having these opportunities for our young people to come back to the city, we have to be purposeful when we talk about bringing jobs into the city, that we're making sure that we're still affordable for them to come into the city. Even an $80,000 job, if they were to have a family, after all the expenses and whatnot, it's not as much as it used to be. So in my opinion, our job is a little bit harder now. We've done a lot and we've done great things and I'm happy with them. But I think now the challenge is, where do we continue to grow? How do we continue to do that? And how do we do it in a fashion where, as we create the jobs, we create the pipeline for our residents to get those jobs and to be able to afford to live in the city where those jobs are.
Thank you, Lynn. Harry?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'd echo everything that both Ian and Lynn have said. Since I've been on the Planning Commission for over 10 years, chairman of the Planning Commission since 2011, the vision that we've had for the economic development of the city is a vibrant city center, an arts and entertainment district. I think that's coming to fruition. We've had, I was down there for an event at Sinestral a few weeks ago, and at the close of the event, it was, I think it was a Thursday afternoon. I noticed a lot of people just walking into Sinestral and enjoying themselves. Young people that were coming back from their jobs, commuting back in from DC or wherever, and I took a little walk around the city after that, and all of the places that I saw were jumping with people. That's the sort of thing. That's the sort of vibrant old town that we wanted. Now, as has been said, we can't just concentrate on one aspect of the city. We've got a lot of different commercial corridors. We need to ensure that our businesses are supported and not taxed out of the city, that we keep taxes reasonable. And as far as education is concerned, I talked to Dr. Newman. He needs to have a transparent dialogue with both the city council and the school board to ensure that he is fully funded and is able to provide a good education to all of our students. We have to be able to have a good open conversation with the school board and Dr. Newman regarding education throughout the city.
Thank you, Harry. So now we're going to go to questions from those in attendance. And the first one is from Uriah Kaiser. And that is, the city council in recent years has shown great interest in investing in the city, from building to a new police station to streetscape improvements on Grant Avenue. 8 weeks into the pandemic, the city council hiked taxes, raising the average homeowner's property tax bill to $220, more than last year, to an average of $4,295 during the coronavirus recovery. Do you envision the city council will retain its appetite for investment? And that can go to anybody.
Happy to jump in on that one. So the struggle I think that the city has is we're in a bit of an unenviable position, just based on where the city is located, the economic factors that we're competing against. When you compare things in Manassas, are you comparing us closer into the Beltway, or are you comparing us out towards Fauquier? And so, who are we comparing ourselves to when we're talking about tax rates and we're talking about tax burden and what is high and what is low? And so the other struggle that we have is there's only 15,000 taxable households in the city of Manassas. So you're trying to spread all the costs the city has over just 15,000 households. And so much like the struggles Manassas Park are facing, eventually you run into an economies of scale issue, which is, can you have everything you want on just 15,000 households or 42,000 people? And we have been sort of telling the community for a very long time, if you want your tax bills to go down, we need to build more houses. If you want your tax bills to go down, we need to bring in more economic development. That's the only way, is to add money to the coffers so we can dilute your tax bill and drive it down. And in the last budget discussion, that was finally happening. That theory proved true. We were finally seeing the new development that's been happening in the city generating quite a lot of new revenue for the city. But when the time came to really stand up to that narrative and say, you know what, we finally have all this new revenue, we're going to lower your tax burden, the council did the exact opposite. So how that line continues to have validity, I think people are really going to have to look into. I've used it myself for years. When people come to me and say, why did you approve this or approve that? I believed it. We have to add more households. We have to add more businesses if we're going to dilute the tax bill and bring it down. And then we had the opportunity to, in the middle of a pandemic, no less. and undoubted economic uncertainty in the future. And the council had a real opportunity to stand up and say, you know what, all these buildings we've built, we're finally going to apply that. We're going to keep your tax bill as low as humanly possible. We're going to recognize that at the time, 1 in 10 people in the city are out of work. We're going to recognize that there's likely recession in the future. And the balance of council just refused to rise to that moment and be able to make those things we've been saying for years consistent with our constituents. So but to your eyes question, I mean, the danger of the tax trajectory isn't in the annual budget, it's in the 5-year planning documents, because every 5-year planning the city does generally assumes a 4% increase every year in tax revenue. So, until citizens really communicate that they think that's unsustainable, you're probably going to have a council that simply is going to keep doing it. But as anybody knows, you can't just keep adding 4%, 4% forever, because eventually you are going to close that gap, as Harry mentioned, and you're not going to have the second highest tax rate, you're going to have the highest. And we are a community that just does not make as much money as our surrounding communities. I mean, I'm sorry, that's just the way the demographics here break down. So a couple $1,000 tax bill in Manassas weighs much more heavily on our residents than a comparable tax bill in other parts of the Commonwealth. So, I've been preaching this for a very long time, but in 10 or 15 years, I think you're going to have a real struggle with how the city can afford this trajectory. And there are people today who look back at past councils and wish they made different decisions. And I don't want us to be in that boat in 10 or 15 years.
Thank you, Ian. Harry, Lynn, do you guys have anything else you'd like to add to that?
I definitely echo what Ian said. My view is that we need to grow the business community and grow the small to moderate business community. That spreads the tax burden, and we need to grow or foster our large business community, because that gives us tax revenue. But we need to take a look, first of all, at the city manager's budget. As I said earlier, the city manager came in with a balanced budget, had everything that he needed, or he said he needed, at $1.44, and that wasn't satisfactory to the city council. That doesn't make any sense to me. The city manager, I know, squeezed the staff pretty hard to make sure that they were buying only the essentials. I know from community development staff, and I know from the airport commission, the airport staff, they told me that they were being squeezed hard and had to come in with a certain budget target. So the city manager was very careful in putting together his budget. The city council decided that that wasn't enough, and they were going to raise taxes in the middle of a pandemic, and they just weren't listening to people. So I would echo what Ian said. I'd say we need to make sure that we grow the business community to spread the tax burden, and make sure that we buy only what's essential to the city during a period of a pandemic.
Thank you, Harry. Lynn, did you want to add anything?
Absolutely. Ian is absolutely right. And I think part of the frustration that I share with many residents is the feeling of being unheard. I started going to meetings several years ago, and I would go to the meetings only when I was upset about something. And I decided, that's not really the way to do this. And I started going to every work session I could, every meeting I could, every community conversation I could. And then I started speaking with the council on a regular basis about what was going on. And during these work sessions, in particular 2 years ago, we were told by Ken Elston, and this made the paper, that we have to raise taxes now to not raise them later. And then a year later, we raised them anyways. When the city manager did his job, he tightened his budget as much as he could. He heard the residents. He knew what was happening with the pandemic. He was well aware that this was not going to be a short-term situation. And the city council literally did the opposite of what they should have done. And they raised the taxes. They read these people's letters. They were begged to not raise the taxes. And instead of listening and taking into account that everybody else was having to tighten their purses as well, they were losing their jobs, whether they are being furloughed or laid off, or taking salary reductions if they were lucky to have jobs. And they said, you know what, from the dais, they lectured us about they know better than we do. And I think that says everything you need to know about the appetite for taxes in the city. And it's nauseating. And it's across the board for our business and our individual residents. Something has to give. And it's time to start with the CIP, the capital improvement plan, and change that process. We absolutely must. It cannot just be a given that every year you're gonna have a 4% increase. For goodness sakes, we don't even give our staff 4% salary increases every year. How in the world are we giving our budget a 4% increase every year? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Thank you, Lynn. And the last question we have before we go to kind of closing statements is from Molly Grove, and it is, keeping our youth in the area or returning to the area after college depends on the community and culture. What is the city missing to keep our young talent wanting to stay in the city? Are you willing to invest in what is needed to keep this talent? And again, open to anybody.
Let me jump in on this one. As I've said, I'm an advocate of the business community working together with the school system to ensure that our students are given jobs, internships, apprenticeships, and mentorships. When I talked to Dr. Newman, he noted that businesses are aware of the program, they just don't know how to utilize it. What I'm hoping to do is act as a clearinghouse. But I also want to work with the, that would apply to the small and moderate business community within Manassas. I also want to work with the larger businesses, the anchors to our economy, the Microns, the BAEs, the Lockheed Martins, and some of the businesses out at the airport to get them involved in giving our students jobs, internships, and mentorships. And if the students have that capability or have that opportunity to work with business in Manassas, they're more likely to stay in Manassas after they graduate from Osborne, or when they come out of university, out of college, they come back here for the summer. They can get internships with a firm that they've worked with during the school year, go back to college, and eventually they'll more likely to come back here. So that's what I'm hoping to do, to foster a culture of keeping our young people in Manassas when they graduate.
Ian, Lynn?
Well, I would just say Harry's basic point is absolutely spot on. If you want people to leave the city, I mean, Manassas doesn't have a college, so kids have to leave here to a lot of the time to go to college. Of course, they can go to GMU or they can go somewhere local, but you have to physically leave the city to get to any college, and a lot of kids don't want to go necessarily that close to home. And so if you want to get them to come back, you have to make sure the first element is that there are jobs there. But I think there's also a piece of this, to Molly's question, that is like, is the culture something that they want to come back to? And I think that that's something that all communities struggle with. What do 20-somethings and 30-somethings want? And that's kind of cracking that code and figuring it out. Now, we are trying to be proactive in that regard. We do an annual poll to try to assess what the opinions are of the community, what are the assets and the amenities that people in the community want, and we try to bake that into our strategic planning. So I think that hearing that is very important. But also, I think that there's always more going on in this city than the public is aware of, and it's something that I've railed on since the first day of my election, and I'm continuing to rail on it. I think we can always do better at letting the public, young and old, know that there are activities and there are things happening that make the city interesting and unique, and also near the city. The city doesn't exist in a vacuum. You are 30 minutes on a good, 40 minutes on a good day from Washington. You're 20 minutes from a handful of wineries. So we have to simultaneously market to all communities what makes Manassas unique, all age groups, what makes Manassas unique, but also what we're near and what you can access by just being in Manassas and what you're close to. We should be able to go, I guarantee you, Prince William County and other locations use Manassas when they're discussing good things that are in the community that you're close to. So we need to be able to have that mindset as well, that we're not only pushing the Manassas identity, but we're also pushing what Manassas is a springboard off to elsewhere in the community.
Thank you, Ian. Lynn?
Yes, this is a great question, and it's one that really resonates with me. And being on Parks and Rec, we talk about this often. We talk about the culture We are a part of the HEAL community, which is healthy eating, active living. That's something that we worked with City Council to do, and we loved it. We work on those programs all the time. I think that the communication aspect of what we have in the city is really something that we struggle with. And I know the city has come a long way in 2 years. I mean, I really give the staff a lot of credit. I see them on the social media all the time, but to Ian's point, there's a large part of our community that's not online and they're not getting the information. But historic, HMI, they do a great job with the festivals. And I think that the city of Manassas is well known and our tourism has really increased. And I think that's one thing that our young families love about the city. They love our 4th of July celebrations. They love our fall festivals. They love our Christmas, gingerbread house contest. We have a lot of things here. So we're really doing amazing work. I think the challenge is really strategically, what do we want to be? Do we really want it to be fully urban, or do we want to stop somewhere in the middle where we have as much as possible in our 10 square miles? And I think that's the question of the day. And I think over the next 10 years, all of the decisions that we're making will make that decision for us. So as we're thinking about these decisions, that's really the question we should be asking.
All right, and the final question is from Cheryl Bass, and it is: the city of Manassas is fortunate to have a strong and diverse business community, including Micron, downtown Manassas businesses, our regional airport, and more. What are your plans to collaborate with those assets in building an even stronger Manassas City Public Schools?
Happy to jump in. We have to build better relationships between all the institutions you just described and our school system. Not just for economic development purposes. I mean, that's a primary one, but letting our students know that these job opportunities exist for them. But there is invaluable institutional knowledge and resources there in the form of mentorships and apprenticeships. I think we need to build to make sure that the concept of apprenticeships has kind of gone out of fashion, but it's coming back into fashion, and that's something that we need to support. There's just an incredible range of resources in this community that I see us doing okay at connecting, but we have to make sure that those connections are stronger and funnel them in. And I will say, one of the organizations in the city that has been trying to do this for years is the Education Foundation, the Manassas City Public Schools Education Foundation. And so before being elected to council, I was a chairman there and president of that organization. And one of its primary goals was to try to make those connections, largely financial, between those various institutions and our school system. But everyone just needs to step up their game. I know everyone is busy, everyone is stressed, everyone has probably all they can handle on their plates, but the school system, we as ambassadors to this community and that business community all need to step it up and just do a better job of communicating and figuring out where you can have those resources. I've had the opportunity to spend time with some of the kids who've gotten apprenticeships at Micron. They're invaluable. I've met people who have internships at Old Town businesses, government contracting firms, who got internships in high school as seniors and they got hired and they still work there. That's right in Old Town Manassas. And so it should happen so often. I can't remember all the faces of the people it happened to. And that's the problem, is that it's happening, but it's happening too infrequently. So we have to build on that.
Thank you, Ian.
Also,
Harry, Lynn?
I'd also say that, that you cannot say too much about direct contact between city council members and the business community, including not only the small and moderate business community, but also the large business communities. I plan to make appointments to talk to the human resources and the CEOs of some of our big, what I call anchor businesses, the big defense contractors, and ask them what I can do to make it easier for them to get our students as interns, as apprentices in their technical fields, and to keep contact with those students back and forth between if they go away to college or once they graduate from Osborne, to get them jobs. So you really have to do personal contact with people. I'm retired, so I plan to make this pretty much my last full-time job if I'm elected, and I'm going to keep on top of personal contact with the business community to make it easier for them to interact with the school system, to get the kids jobs, internships, and mentorships.
Thank you, Harry. Lynn, anything you want to add?
Absolutely. I mean, Ian and Harry have really said a lot, but I just want to mention, if we're really talking about equity, then we should be, as a city council and a school board, working together more efficiently to build these relationships and build these bridges for our students. So it would be one of my wishes and one of my top priorities to create sort of a liaison from the city council and the school board, if not a joint committee, that would start to work with these contacts in the city, in the business community, that we stop just saying this is happening and we start making it happen more, right? Because I think once it takes off, it's going to be a wonderful thing, and it's already there, but it's not being implemented to the level needed in order to call it successful.
Perfect. Thank you, Lynn. Now we're going to go to closing statements. So the order will be Harry, Lynn, and then Ian.
Okay, thanks, Ross. I'd like to thank everybody for attending and your interest and questions, and for having us here. I really appreciate it. Again, I've been in the city for about 30 years. I'm chairman of the Planning Commission and a member of the Regional Airport Commission. And my vision for the city is one that has a thriving, diverse, small and moderate business community that's anchored by a large business, the large firms on the outside, that has a close interaction with our city school system and the private school systems and homeschool systems that are in the city. I think I've got probably as much experience as anybody on the ticket. Like I say, I've been I was in the Army doing a huge variety of diverse activities for 22 years. I retired here because I like this community. It has been a vibrant and diverse community. I want it to stay that way. I want to make sure that taxes are reasonable. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm going to slash taxes. The city does need money, but taxes need to be reasonable enough to keep a diverse, vibrant community. We need people with six-figure salaries who commute into Washington every day, but we also need people with more moderate salaries, more moderate incomes, that do the work of helping the city and helping surrounding communities be the good places to live. I want this community to be a good place to raise a family, a safe community. That's another thing I'm very strong about, is support to the police. I think we have a very at one of the best police forces in the Commonwealth, if not the nation. It's one of 2% in the nation that's certified by the Commission on Accreditation of Law Enforcement Activities. So I'm very proud of that, and I would like to keep that fully funded and well trained. So I'm hoping to have your vote. I'm going to be very transparent with the community, and I plan to essentially follow Ian in his efforts to maintain contact with the citizens of the community and the business community. Thanks.
Thank you, Harry. Lynn?
Thank you. Yes, thank you all for having us today. It's been a great conversation and I loved all the questions. I am really excited about the opportunity to become your next councilwoman. I think that I bring a balance to the bench. I definitely have the homegirl feel, but I have experiences outside of Manassas, Virginia, and I think that's very important when we're talking about vision and strategy. I think transparency and communication are our top issues in Manassas City, and I think that's from the top down. And the only way to fix that is to have different voices at the table. So regarding taxes, yes, I'm always going to say I want taxes low, but I recognize that we also want a quality of life here, and to have that quality of life, it does cost money. We need to have good education here. That means we need to be taking care of our schools and our teachers and our students. That's not just monetarily though, that's also with supports. We need to have our stadiums filled when that's possible again. You know, we need to be at those Friday night football games once again and bring that community spirit back. Also, I'd like to say that when we're talking about sustainability, green space is really important. So while I'm going to support the business community and the growth and economic development, I also want to be mindful and I want to be very purposeful with how we give up our last few green acres. It's really important to your lifestyle and mental health to be able to have other things to do besides sit inside your house. And I find that to be something that's really charming about our historic Manassas. We have a lot here to offer, and I'm excited to be a part of the next chapter. Thank you.
Ian.
Early voting has started. You can vote in the city of Manassas at the registrar's office starting at 8:30 every day until 5 p.m. normal business hours, and they will be having in-person early voting also the 2 Saturdays leading up to Election Day. You may also vote absentee. And of course, you can vote on November 3rd. So I hope you will vote for me. I hope you vote for Lynn. I hope you vote for Harry. I hope you will vote for Terry. And it's been an honor serving this community, and I hope to do it for 4 more years. So thank you very much. And again, thank you, Ross. Thank you to the Chamber. We appreciate this opportunity, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much, Ian. And again, we want to thank everybody for participating. Again, we're going to be making sure that this is on Facebook Live, Facebook later this afternoon, so the community can see your input. Again, we at the Chamber want to make sure that we're providing enough resources for everybody to be educated when they go to the polls. If you have any questions about their candidates, every candidate has a campaign website, Facebook, Twitter, all that fun stuff. So again, thank you all so much for participating. If you guys have any further questions or want to learn more about the Chamber, please feel free to reach out to us. Everybody have a good rest of the day and enjoy the weekend.
Thanks a lot, Ross. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.